In today's world, we stand on the brink of an educational revolution, one fueled by the unstoppable force of digital technology. Just think about it. Only a couple of decades ago, learning was limited to physical classrooms with chalkboards, textbooks, and teachers at the helm, guiding students in person. But today, the entire landscape has transformed. Education is no longer confined to four walls. It's accessible anywhere at any time and through countless digital platforms that can deliver information with just a click. This transformation, driven by the internet and advanced technology, promises a level of learning and accessibility never before imagined. But we have to ask ourselves, is this entirely for the better? Are we creating a world where students are truly learning and growing, or are we sacrificing something fundamental in this shift to screens and algorithms? Imagine a child today. They have access to more information in a single device than an entire library could have offered just a few years ago. Yeah, with this flood of information comes a new set of challenges that our grandparents would have never imagined. Information overload is real, and it's not just an abstract concept. For students, it's becoming harder to differentiate between reliable sources and the sea of misinformation that floods our feeds and online spaces. In this digital age where everyone has a voice, not every voice is accurate or helpful. Students are faced with the overwhelming task of filtering through oceans of data, deciding what to believe and what to question. And this burden doesn't come without a cost. It impacts their mental health, adds pressure, and can even discourage their natural curiosity. The joy of learning, that sense of discovery, often gets buried under the weight of just trying to keep up with the sheer volume of what's out there. And as we explore the implications of this change, it's crucial to remember that this isn't just about the methods we use to teach. It's about the very way we perceive and process knowledge. Today, knowledge has become more of a commodity than an experience. We're no longer just learning for the sake of understanding and personal growth. We're learning to keep pace with a fast-moving world where staying relevant is a constant struggle. This pace, fueled by digital advancements, demands that students not only learn rapidly, but also master skills of discernment, evaluation, and critical thinking on an almost superhuman level. The tools at their fingertips may seem like a dream to some, but to others it feels like a relentless race that never allows for a pause, a deep breath, or even a moment of reflection. This is a new era, one that challenges every assumption we held about education and learning. It forces us to ask, how can we maintain the depth of knowledge, the connection to real-world experiences, and the mentorship that traditional education offered, while also embracing the undeniable power of digital access? We're facing a defining moment in education, one that requires us to find a way to harness the benefits of technology without losing the very essence of what it means to learn, to grow, and to connect. It's a journey, an experiment, and for the sake of future generations, it's a challenge we must navigate thoughtfully and with open hearts. Today, we live in a time where the sheer amount of information available to us is staggering, unlike anything humanity has ever experienced before. It's both amazing and terrifying. Think about it. At any given moment, we have access to millions, no billions, of pages of information. We can search, read, listen, and watch, learning about practically anything we want. But that kind of access doesn't come without consequences. For kids and young adults, especially, this information overload can feel like a tidal wave that just keeps crashing down. They're expected to keep up, to absorb, to understand, and then make sense of all this data that's constantly being thrown at them. And I have to ask, at what point does this become too much? When do we cross that line where instead of empowering people to learn and grow, we end up overwhelming them to the point of exhaustion Imagine being a student today. You're not just learning math, science, or history from a textbook like we did. Now you're expected to juggle traditional schoolwork while also navigating a never-ending stream of online resources, social media, and educational apps. You've got instant access to information, but with it comes the expectation that you'll know it all, that you'll be able to sift through, understand, and retain all of this at a speed that's almost unnatural. The pressure to stay informed, to perform, to keep up with your peers in the endless content cycle. It's intense. It's no longer about taking your time to learn something deeply. It's about how fast you can get through the material, how much you can remember, and how well you can regurgitate it back. And this constant exposure to information creates a sense of urgency. We're all part of this culture where we feel like we're going to miss out on something critical if we don't consume as much information as possible. It's like the internet has rewired our brains to think that if we're not online, learning, or engaging every minute, then we're falling behind. But here's a question. How sustainable is that? What does it do to a young person's mind, to their sense of self-worth, when they're constantly being bombarded with the message that they're not doing enough, learning fast enough, or that they might be missing out on something important? And let's not ignore the darker side of this information overload. With so much content available, how do we know what's true and what isn't? For every legitimate source of knowledge, there are countless other sources spreading misinformation, and young people who haven't yet developed the life experience to discern fact from fiction can get caught up in this web of falsehoods and half-truths. The pressure to sift through this mess and find the truth is intense. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack while someone's piling on more hay by the second. And so what we're left with is a generation that's trying to do the impossible, to keep up with a world that's moving faster than they can process, while also trying to figure out what's real and what's not in an environment where it's increasingly difficult to tell the difference. But there's another layer to this, and it's something that we, as adults, sometimes fail to recognize. When young people are flooded with information but feel like they don't have the tools to keep up, it creates a kind of quiet, invisible pressure. They don't always express it, but they feel it. It manifests as anxiety, as stress, and sometimes even as hopelessness. The joy of learning, that spark that comes from discovering something new, is at risk of being snuffed out by the sheer weight of this endless, relentless flow of information. And in the process, we risk creating a generation that feels disconnected, that feels like they're always running but never quite catching up. So what's the answer? How do we support young people in an era where information is limitless, but so are the demands on their time and attention? How do we encourage them to slow down, to think critically, to take their time to really understand and enjoy learning, instead of feeling like they're on a treadmill they can't get off of? It's a question we need to be asking, and it's a conversation that needs to be ongoing, because the stakes are high in the future of how we educate our kids, and really how we live our lives in this digital age depends on finding a balance that empowers rather than overwhelms. When we think about the contrast between traditional learning and this new world of digital education, it's like comparing two completely different universes. Traditional learning had this personal touch, there was a human element to it. A teacher wasn't just there to give you facts and figures. They were there to inspire you, to challenge you, to guide you on this journey of understanding. You were in a physical space with your classmates, learning together, connecting, sharing ideas, even debating. There was this real sense of community. You could see the reaction on someone's face, sense the energy in the room, feel that engagement in a way that no screen could ever replicate. That's a powerful thing. And for so many of us, those are the moments that stuck with us. Those were the experiences that made us fall in love with learning, that made us want to know more, to ask questions, to be curious. But here we are in a time where digital learning has taken center stage. It's convenient, sure. It's accessible. We can learn from anywhere, anytime, and about almost anything we want. There's something really incredible about that freedom, about that level of accessibility, especially for people who never had those kinds of opportunities before. Imagine someone in a remote part of the world who can now connect to a university course, or a parent who can squeeze in a few lessons after a long day of work. That's amazing. It's a revolution in the way we access knowledge, and there's no doubt that digital education has opened doors for millions. But the reality is there's something that gets lost when we move everything to a screen, when learning becomes more about clicks and uploads than about people and interactions. There's depth and emotional connection that you get in a traditional classroom that just isn't there in a virtual setting. It's like trying to compare a real conversation with a text message. Sure, you're communicating in both cases, but it's not the same. In a classroom, you have spontaneous discussions, unplanned moments, the chance to ask questions right then and there, to feel the tension or the excitement in a room. And when a teacher's standing there in front of you, they're not just delivering information, they're interpreting it, bringing it to life in a way that resonates with you. That's something you just don't get when you're staring at a screen, working through modules or watching pre-recorded video. And for students today, especially young kids, those face-to-face interactions are critical. They're essential for developing communication skills, for learning how to read body language, how to empathize, how to be present with other people. But here's where it gets tricky, because even though we know the value of traditional learning, we also see the value in digital tools. Technology gives us access to resources that a single teacher, no matter how great they are, simply can't provide. It gives students a way to learn at their own pace, to explore subjects that might not even be offered in their school, to connect with ideas and cultures from all over the world. It's an incredible supplement to traditional learning, but that's the key. It should be a supplement, not a replacement. And yet, with the pace that technology is advancing, we're in danger of letting it take over completely. We're at a point where schools are pushing for more and more screen time, where teachers are feeling pressured to incorporate digital tools into every lesson, where students are spending more time on their devices than they are in face-to-face discussions or hands. On projects, it's almost like we're trying to force this digital square peg into the round hole of traditional education, and it's not always a perfect fit. So the big question is, how do we strike a balance? How do we embrace the advantages of digital learning without losing the magic of traditional education? Maybe it's about blending the two, creating a hybrid model where we use technology to enhance, but not replace, the human experience of learning. Imagine a classroom where students learn some concepts online at their own pace, but then come together in person to discuss, to debate, to engage with each other, where teachers use technology as a tool, not as a crutch. A place where we're not just pushing students to memorize facts or complete assignments, but to actually understand, to question, to think critically. Because at the end of the day, learning isn't just about absorbing information. It's about connecting with it, with each other, and with the world around us. It's about becoming not just smarter, but wiser, more empathetic, more engaged as human beings. This is the challenge we're facing right now. We're at this crossroads where we have to make conscious choices about how we want to educate future generations. We have to be careful not to let convenience overshadow connection, not to let screens replace the kind of deep meaningful interactions that only happen face to face. We've got to remember that education isn't just about knowledge. It's about human growth, about helping people become the best versions of themselves. And that takes more than just a screen and a Wi-Fi connection. It takes real human engagement. It takes community. And that's something worth holding on to. No matter how advanced our technology gets, when we talk about digital learning, one topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention is the ethical and privacy issues that come along with it. It's like this elephant in the room that everyone's aware of, but no one wants to talk about too loudly. Think about it. Every time a student logs into a virtual classroom, uses an educational app, or submits an assignment online, they're leaving a trail, a digital footprint that's there forever. And who's watching? Who's collecting this data? Who's using it? Because let's be honest, there's money to be made in data, and big tech companies know that. Education is supposed to be this safe space, a place where students feel free to learn, explore, and make mistakes. But how can they feel safe if there's this constant underlying knowledge that someone somewhere might be tracking every move they make online? It's unsettling, and frankly, it's something we need to start addressing more openly. Imagine being a young kid today. You're told to go online to do your homework on this app, to take tests on that website, and the whole time there's this hidden layer of data collection going on that you're completely unaware of. This data isn't just numbers. It's a map of who you are, your interests, your struggles, your strengths, your weaknesses. And with the way data is bought and sold nowadays, who's to say that one day this information won't come back to haunt you? Imagine applying for a job years down the line and your educational data, your test scores, your behavior on certain platforms, your academic history is somehow accessible to future employers. It sounds extreme, but we're already living in a world where data can follow you for a lifetime. And these kids, they're being raised in it without fully understanding the consequences. It goes deeper than just privacy, though. There's an ethical side to this, a side that questions what kind of values we're instilling in students when we bring tech giants into our classrooms. Many of these companies aren't just there to help kids learn. They're there to make a profit. They want loyalty. They want brand recognition, and they're willing to use education as a way to achieve that. So now we have kids who are being introduced to certain brands from the moment they start learning to read. Think about that. The line between education and consumerism is getting blurry, and it's raising all kinds of ethical red flags. Kids are smart. They're going to pick up on this, even if they can't articulate it. They'll start to see learning not as a pure pursuit of knowledge, but as something that's tied to certain brands, certain platforms, certain corporate interests. It's a slippery slope. And then there's the question of consent. These are young people we're talking about, kids and teenagers who often don't fully understand the concept of data privacy, much less the implications of what it means to give their information away. But in this digital learning environment, it's not like they have a choice. They're basically being forced to agree to terms and conditions they can't even comprehend, just so they can't even comprehend, just so they can get an education. And most parents don't have the time or the technical know how to dig through every privacy policy or understand every data, sharing clause hidden in the fine print. It's like we've handed over the keys to these kids' futures without really considering the long-term impact. And that's a heavy burden for any parent to bear. So what do we do? How do we protect these students in a digital world where privacy is becoming a luxury, not a right? I think the answer starts with transparency. Schools, companies, and governments need to be upfront about what data is being collected, why it's being collected, and who it's being shared with. Students and their parents have a right to know exactly what's happening with their information, and they deserve the chance to opt out. if they're not comfortable with it. But more than that, we need to start questioning whether it's even ethical to involve certain companies in education to begin with. Do we really want tech giants to have this much control over our kids' learning environments? Or should we be pushing for educational tools and platforms that are truly independent, that don't have an ulterior motive, that respect the sanctity of a child's learning experience? We're at a pivotal moment here. If we don't start setting boundaries, if we don't start having these conversations, we're going to find ourselves in a future where education is just another data mining operation, where kids are treated less like students and more like statistics. And that's not a future we should want. Education should be about growing minds, not growing profits. It should be a place of trust, a place where students feel safe and respected, a place where they can learn and make mistakes without the fear that some corporation is watching and taking notes. We have to protect that for their sake and for the sake of every generation to come. One of the biggest issues with digital learning that we really need to talk about is the stark reality of inequality. I mean, think about it. On paper, this digital era seems like it should be the great equalizer. Technology has this incredible potential to make knowledge accessible to everyone, everywhere. But when you dig a little deeper, you start to see that this new digital world isn't as equal as we'd like to believe. Instead of leveling the playing field, it's actually widening the gap for a lot of kids. Some kids have the luxury of high-speed internet, the latest laptops, tablets, and every educational app you can think of. They're learning in a digital paradise, surrounded by every tool imaginable. But what about the kids who don't have that? What about the students who are struggling just to get reliable internet access, let alone afford a decent computer? This isn't just a small hiccup. This is a massive problem that's affecting millions of young people in the US and around the world. Imagine being a student who wants to learn, who's eager to succeed, but every time they try to log on to their online class, the internet cuts out. Or maybe they're working off an outdated laptop that freezes every other minute, or even sharing a single device with siblings. How are they supposed to keep up with their classmates who have access to every digital resource under the sun? The truth is they can't. And that's not just frustrating, it's heartbreaking. It's like we're setting them up to fail before they even have a chance to start. We're telling them that education is the way to a better life, but then we're putting up these invisible barriers that make it nearly impossible for them to get the same quality of education as their peers. And when we talk about bridging this divide, it's not just about internet speed or devices. It's about something deeper. It's about the right to learn, the right to grow, and the right to grow and the right to pursue their dreams on a level playing field. This digital divide is more than just a tech issue. It's an issue of fairness, of justice, of what kind of society we want to be. Are we okay with a future where the quality of a child's education is dictated by their zip code? Because that's what's happening right now. Kids in affluent areas, in homes with resources, they're able to thrive in this digital world. They're given every advantage, every opportunity. But kids in low-income neighborhoods are being left behind, not because they lack talent or drive, but because they lack access. And that's just wrong. Every child, regardless of their background, deserves a fair shot at education. Every child deserves the chance to learn without having to worry about whether their internet will hold up during a quiz or if their family can afford a new laptop when the old one breaks down. And it's not just about the here and now. It's about the ripple effect. Kids who are left behind today will struggle to catch up tomorrow. They'll face more obstacles, more challenges, and they'll carry that disadvantage with them throughout their lives. It impacts their job opportunities, their economic stability, even their sense of self-worth. Education is supposed to be this great equalizer, this tool that helps people rise above their circumstances. But if we're not careful, digital learning will do the opposite. It'll become a privilege rather than a right, available only to those who can afford it. And that's a future we need to avoid at all costs. So how do we fix it? How do we make sure that technology doesn't become yet another barrier to opportunity? It starts with recognizing this as a real issue, something that affects real kids, real families, schools, governments, tech companies. All of them need to step up and make sure that every student has access to the tools they need to succeed. We're talking about providing affordable internet, donating devices, creating safe spaces where kids can go if they don't have a quiet place to study at home. This isn't just about charity. It's about responsibility. If we're going to embrace digital learning, we have to commit to making it accessible for everyone. And honestly, this isn't just about benefiting those who are struggling. A society where everyone has access to a quality education is stronger, more resilient. When we invest in kids' futures, we're investing in our future. We're building a society where everyone has the chance to contribute, to innovate, to lead. To lead, we're creating a world where success isn't limited to those who already have an advantage. So let's do this right. Let's make sure that in this digital age, no one gets left behind. Let's make sure that every child has the chance to reach their full potential, no matter where they come from, because that's the world we should all want to live in. A world where education truly is the great equalizer, where every kid, every family, every community has a shot at the American dream. When we talk about digital learning, there's this aspect that often gets swept under the rug, what it's doing to our social skills and our ability to think critically. This is huge. We're entering a generation that's learning almost entirely from screens, from isolated online platforms, and the consequences of that are real. Humans are social animals. We thrive on connection, on face-to-face interaction, on being able to read a person's body language, hear the tone of their voice, and see the look in their eyes. But with digital learning, kids are spending more time alone with screens, more time engaging with avatars, icons, and text than with real people. And the problem is, no matter how advanced the technology, a screen can't teach empathy. It can't teach someone how to feel the energy in a room, how to understand someone's emotions, or even how to navigate the subtleties of real world conversation. Imagine what it's like to be a kid growing up today, where social interactions are increasingly mediated by technology. Instead of raising your hand and having an open discussion in a classroom, you're typing a question into a chat box. Instead of turning to your friend and working on a project together, you're messaging back and forth, often with people you've never even met in real life. And here's the thing, those skills, communication, collaboration, empathy, those aren't just add-ons. They're foundational. They're what allow us to connect as human beings, to work together, to build relationships. When kids aren't practicing these skills, they're missing out on essential parts of what it means to be human. And it's not just about being nice or friendly. These social skills impact how we navigate every part of life, from our careers to our personal relationships to how we handle conflict and make decisions. But beyond the social element, there's also the issue of critical thinking. In a digital world, information is instantaneous and answers are available at the tap of a finger. We've got Google, we've got AI, we've got all this information literally on demand. And while that sounds amazing, and it is in a lot of ways, it also removes the need for curiosity, for the kind of deep, reflective thinking that used to be a cornerstone of learning. Kids today can get answers without going through the process of figuring things out on their own. They don't have to wrestle with complex questions or develop the patience to work through a problem, because the answers are already there, laid out for them. And when you don't develop that skill, the skill of critical thinking, of questioning, of doubting, of investigating, you end up with people who take information at face value, who are easily influenced, who don't know how to think for themselves. And I think that's dangerous. We're creating a world where knowledge is abundant, but wisdom is scarce, where kids can memorize facts, but don't necessarily understand them. They're consuming information without truly engaging with it, without challenging it, without learning how to analyze it or even question it. And that's not education. That's just data absorption. True learning is about wrestling with ideas, about exploring different perspectives, about testing our beliefs and understanding the world in a deeper, more meaningful way. It's about being able to see beyond the surface, to connect the dots, to ask why and how rather than just what. But that kind of thinking doesn't come from staring at a screen or scrolling through a feed. It comes from real engagement, from interacting with other people, from debate, from hands-on experience. So where does that leave us? Are we really preparing kids for the complexities of the real world if their education is mostly digital? Are we giving them the tools they need to navigate relationships, to understand themselves, to think independently? I think we have to start asking these questions because the stakes are high. We're not just educating students. We're shaping the future of society. And if we want a society that values connection, empathy, and independent thought, we have to make sure those values are part of our educational experience. That means creating spaces where kids can interact face-to-face, where they can collaborate, where they can engage in real dialogue. It means encouraging curiosity, challenging them to think critically, and giving them the freedom to make mistakes, to question, to learn in ways that go beyond screens and devices. Because at the end of the day, technology is a tool, and it's a powerful one. But it should never replace the human elements of education. It should never replace the connections, the conversations, the eye contact, the sense of being in a shared space with others. Those are the things that make us human, and those are the things that every child deserves to experience as part of their learning journey. We owe it to them, and we owe it to them, and we owe it to ourselves to make sure that digital learning enhances, not replaces, the fundamental human aspects of education. When we talk about the digital age and what it's done to education, one of the most profound changes we're seeing is in the role of the teacher. It's easy to overlook, right? We focus so much on technology, on tools, on the endless resources available online, but we forget that at the end of the day, teaching isn't just about delivering information. It's about mentorship, guidance, and that human connection between a teacher and a student. For centuries, teachers have been more than just dispensers of knowledge. They've been role models, motivators, a steady presence that provides support, wisdom, and sometimes even tough love when it's needed. But now, as technology moves into every corner of the classroom, teachers are being forced to adapt, to redefine what it means to teach in a world where Google has every answer, and screens seem to offer endless ways to learn. Think about what it must feel like to be a teacher today. You've dedicated your life to helping students grow, to making a difference in their lives, to inspiring them, and suddenly you're being told that everything you used to do face to face can now be done by an algorithm, an app, or a series of online modules. It's like the very value of human teaching is being questioned. But here's the thing, no algorithm can replace the experience, intuition, and heart that a teacher brings to the classroom. A screen can give you facts, sure, but it can't see when a student is struggling. It can't pick up on that subtle body language that says, I don't understand, but I'm afraid to ask. It can't offer encouragement, patience, and perspective in the way a teacher can. And that's where teachers in this digital age become even more important, not less. Now, instead of just being the source of knowledge, teachers are taking on the role of guides, facilitators, and mentors in a landscape that's more complex than ever before. They're not just teaching math or science. They're helping students learn how to think critically about all the information that's at their fingertips. They're teaching students how to discern truth from misinformation, how to ask the right questions, and how to build a foundation of understanding in a world that's constantly bombarding them with data. Teachers are there to provide context, to add that layer of humanity that technology can't replicate. They're there to show students how to apply what they've learned in meaningful ways, how to solve real-world problems, how to work together, and yes, how to be good, compassionate people. That's not something you get from a search engine or a virtual classroom. And let's not forget the emotional role teachers play. In a world that's more disconnected than ever, teachers are sometimes one of the few constants in a young person's life. They provide stability, encouragement, and a sense of belonging. For a lot of kids, school is more than just a place to learn. It's a place where they feel seen, valued, and understood. Teachers are often the ones who notice when something's wrong, who recognize when a student needs a little extra support or guidance, and who have the patience to provide it. This kind of emotional connection is irreplaceable. It's the kind of influence that stays with students long after they've left the classroom, long after they've forgotten the details of the curriculum. It's that connection, that mentorship that helps shape who they become as adults. But here's where it gets challenging. We're asking teachers to do all of this, to be mentors, guides, emotional supports, in an environment where they're also expected to integrate the latest tech to keep up with the rapid pace of change and to prepare students for a future that's almost impossible to predict. It's a tall order, and we have to recognize the weight of that responsibility. We can't just keep piling on expectations without providing the resources, training, and support that teachers need to succeed in this new role. If we want them to help students navigate this complex digital world, we need to give them the tools to do so. We need to honor their expertise, respect their intuition, and trust that even in an age of technology, the human touch they bring to education is irreplaceable. So, as we move further into this digital age, let's remember that technology is just a tool. It's not the teacher. The heart of education still lies in the relationships, the mentorship, the shared experiences that only a real human teacher can provide. We have to support our teachers, invest in them, and trust them to guide the next generation. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about what students know. It's about who they are, who they're becoming, and the values they carry with them. And that's something only a teacher, with all their wisdom, patience, and humanity, can truly teach. So here we are, standing at the crossroads of tradition and technology, facing the question that every generation will probably have to ask in its own way. How do we keep the best of both worlds? How do we embrace the immense power and potential of digital learning without losing the very soul of education? Because, let's be honest, the digital tools we have today, they're phenomenal. They open doors we couldn't have even dreamed of a generation ago. A kid in a small town with nothing but a tablet and an internet connection can learn about astrophysics, explore history, even get inspired to invent something new. That's incredible. But there's this other side, deeper, almost intangible part of education that doesn't live in any app or algorithm. It's about human connection, about the feeling of being part of something bigger than ourselves. It's about learning not just what to think, but how to connect, how to empathize. Mm-hmm. And I think more than anything, it's about learning how to be a human in a world that's becoming more and more digital. Finding that balance is hard. We don't want it to resist progress, but we also don't want to become so enamored with technology that we lose sight of what's truly important. It's not about choosing one or the other. It's about figuring out how to use technology as a tool, a powerful tool, sure, but a tool that serves us, that complements the human experience rather than replacing it. We've got to ask ourselves, what's the purpose of education? Is it just to memorize facts and pass tests? Or is it about developing well-rounded individuals who can think critically, connect with others, and navigate the complexities of the world? If we see education as more than just knowledge transfer, then we need to make sure that our approach to digital learning reflects that. This means creating spaces for both digital and real-life experiences, where technology enhances learning but doesn't replace the need for face-to-face interactions. It means using online resources to expand our knowledge, while still giving students the chance to sit down together, to debate, to brainstorm, to experience the messiness of real conversation. It's about making sure that students learn empathy and teamwork alongside math and science. Because at the end of the day, the future isn't just about what we know. It's about how we relate to one another, how we build communities, how we make decisions that benefit not just ourselves, but everyone around us. And we have to remember that balance isn't something we find once and hold on to forever. It's a constant adjustment, a willingness to adapt, to keep asking questions, to check ourselves and make sure we're moving in the right direction. The world is going to keep changing, and so will technology. There will always be new tools, new platforms, new challenges. But as long as we keep our focus on what truly matters, the growth, the humanity, the wisdom we want to pass down to the next generation, I think we can figure this out. We can create a world where technology and tradition work hand in hand, where students have access to the incredible resources of the digital age, but also get to experience the richness of human connection. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about being open, being aware, and being intentional about the choices we make. We owe it to our kids, to ourselves, and to the future to get this right, because education isn't just about creating workers for tomorrow's economy. It's about creating thinkers, leaders, compassionate individuals who can navigate the complexities of life. And that's a mission worth striving for, a balance worth finding. So let's keep asking the hard questions, keep challenging ourselves, and keep pushing to make education, both digital and traditional, the best it can be for everyone